Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, November 1st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. Three, two, one. Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, November 1st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Northwestern game is in 4 days. The game against Michigan in 25 days. It is the first day of November. I stumbled off the top of the show because I was like, it can't be November already. It is, in fact, the first day of November. Also, the first day of the college football playoff rankings. The first round of those will come out tonight at 7. We will have our live streaming reaction to them at 7 as well at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We are entering the home stretch of the college football season, as hard as that may be to believe. This is going to be a huge month of content at Buckeye Huddle and on our podcasts and YouTube channel, so go ahead right now, take a minute to subscribe on your podcast platforms of choice, as well as subscribing and ringing the bell at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, and of course, consider becoming a member at BuckeyeHuddle.com as well. This is going to be a crazy month. You're not going to want to miss it, so just go ahead and do those 3 things right now. We can wait. All right, now on with today's show. We're taking a little advanced look at tonight's college football playoff rankings, what we're expecting, what it might all mean. My guest today is Tony Gerdeman of Buckeye Huddle. Tony, honestly, I cannot believe we are already at this point of the regular season.
No, and it's flown by, and at the start of the season, you're like, what weekend is that? Is that like week 8? What at week 9? And it's like, don't worry about it now. It's not going to be here forever. And then boom, here we are.
Here we are, yes, already in November, already talking college football playoff. This year feels like it might have more uncertainty than most years. I mean, there's still 6 unbeaten Power 5 teams, but several of them seem to have some really obvious weaknesses. A bunch of them are going to be playing each other, Tennessee and at Georgia this week, for example. You also have a 1-loss Alabama lurking. You get 3 1-loss Pac-12 teams. You got a 1-loss Illinois, Ole Miss, North Carolina. There's a couple of those I would not have necessarily seen coming. I know a lot of this stuff is going to sort itself out over the next month or so, but right now, how confident are you that you could pick the 4 teams that are going to be in the college football playoff? More or less confident than in a typical year?
I think less confident, because I do think there are, instead of 3 that you know for sure, I don't know that there are 3 that you know for sure, because I don't know how many from each conference are going to be in there. And I think this is a year where there's a way that there are only 2 conferences in the playoffs this year. And to say that, you're eliminating so many other teams and just a bunch of unknowns at this point in terms of, as you said, who is going to win between Tennessee and Georgia, and then what do they do? What does the loser do after that? Because that loser is definitely not out, and that loser might be in a better position than the loser of the SEC championship game. Like there's it, and as we learn what the committee is looking for, and then what do they do the next week, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But there's Michigan, Clemson, Alabama, TCU. Those are teams that have roads to make it, and maybe they aren't the best 3 or 4 teams in the nation, but they have the best schedules. Not that Michigan does, but like a Clemson, a TCU, maybe an Oregon gets in there, and there's any 7 teams that you could say are going to be in there, maybe 8 or so.
Yeah, and it feels, to your point earlier, it does feel like every year, and then sometimes from week to week during a year, the criteria for the committee seems to change. This team has to be in, they have to be number 1 because they have the best win. Oh, no, this team has the best body of work. And this team, how many times have we heard the phrase game control, Tony? More than a few. It seems like a few of those things could point to different teams this year. So who are you expecting to be number 1 in those rankings when they come out on Tuesday night?
I am torn between Tennessee and Georgia. Tennessee has the best win of the year. Georgia has the second best win of the year. So I think that's your 1 and 2. And it just depends on, do they want to be different than the polls? And sometimes they do. They want to set the tone, and then the polls will adjust to them. Because not that we would have an opportunity, but if the committee comes out and puts Tennessee 1 and Georgia 2, and they weren't playing this week to decide that, I think you would eventually see the AP and the coaches adjust to the college football playoff rankings. So is this the committee? This is an opportunity for them to set the tone. And I think based on beating Alabama, Tom, there is nothing else that you can do that should deserve the number one ranking. And I think initially you have to go off of best wins and body of work. And so I guess if I say Tennessee, I'm kind of giving them a little bit of street cred for doing that. But these are a bunch of guys and gals in suits. So I don't know if street cred is the right thing to give them. So I will go Georgia, even though I think Tennessee has the best win, or maybe they view Georgia as having the best win. That's why it will be interesting to see where Oregon and Alabama rank in there.
Yeah,
and maybe that tells us who number one is.
Yeah, and we'll get to the middle to bottom of the poll next. But I did want to ask. I mean, it sounds like if you're picking Georgia, I was going to say Tennessee. I think they might go Tennessee 1, Georgia 2. But again, you're going to learn a lot about what the committee thinks of Alabama versus Oregon. And, one was a 3-point win, one was a, 46-point win. So, and then the always fun, well, you can't count that loss against Oregon. That was week 1. But Georgia, the win that Georgia had week 1, boy, you can't ignore that. And it's like, well, you got to kind of pick a lane there. And we'll get to that later, too. But, Tennessee, Georgia, maybe 1, maybe 2. Where do you think Ohio State ranks tonight? Where will the committee have them? Not necessarily where you would. And again, if who do you see ahead of them wherever they are?
I think they will be 3 because they have been more dominant than Michigan, more dominant than Clemson, and I don't think they'll jump TCU up there, even though Tennessee maybe has more quality wins than just about anybody in the poll. So I do expect Ohio State, because they have played well and they have looked good, and they did. I'm sure they'll look at the common opponents for Ohio State and Michigan, and really I think Ohio State is just the points have been more impressive than Michigan. So I expect Ohio State to be number 3.
And the committee also in the past has sort of tried to reward teams that at least try to play a good non-conference schedule, and you can only do so much. You schedule Notre Dame 8-10 years out, and you never know what you're going to get. And Ohio State did not get a great Notre Dame team this year. Michigan didn't even try. And that's just a type of thing that they tend to dock you some points for. So we'll see how that all plays out. We are also early enough in the process that you're going to hear all sorts of talk about, could 3 SEC teams make it to the field and all that. You mentioned earlier the possibility of only 2 conferences, and whether that's 3 SEC teams and a Big Ten team, or both Ohio State and Michigan getting in the field. I mean, that talk is a little less stupid than normal because there's at least a theoretical pathway there. So the thing that I'm looking for on that front tonight is, where is Alabama? Are they number 5 behind the 2 SEC teams and the 2 unbeaten Big Ten teams? Are they behind Clemson? I mean, that's what I'm looking for. What are you watching for tonight?
Yeah, and they should be behind TCU as well, because what has Alabama done this year? Their best win is Mississippi State or something like that. And so if you're not rewarding a TCU team who has wins over both Kansas schools, wins over both Oklahoma schools, like that's a legitimate thing. And so I will be looking for, where is TCU in relation to Alabama? And if Alabama is ahead of any undefeated teams, that will be disappointing, because you're giving credit to Alabama for something that you're giving credit to them for a loss. And that's, TCU hasn't done that yet. So I guess maybe you can't give TCU credit for a loss when they don't have one. But it would be disappointing and not all that unexpected, frankly. And there's a new chair this year, so we'll see. Not that he has any sway, but we'll get to hear from him Tuesday night, so I'm looking forward to that.
All right, and one of the other teams I'm kind of looking at just as a little barometer. We've done this enough years now that we can kind of read the tea leaves a little bit. One team that I think is going to be really interesting to watch is LSU, because it seems like they could be one of the really key teams this year. If you hear the committee start talking about how beating LSU is this great win for Tennessee, but then they've got LSU at number 10 or something, because you got to forget about the fact that LSU lost that Tennessee game because they were missing 2 starting offensive linemen. Their left tackle was sick and their left guard got hurt early in the game. So the whole left side of the offensive line was gone. They got completely dominated in that game because of that. So if you see them sort of hand wave the LSU loss as like, well, you can't dock them points for that, but oh boy, the quality of the Tennessee win over LSU, and they're number 10, that's one of those like, yeah, you can't really have it both ways. And that sort of transitions into my next question, which is, for several years now, we've both been talking about the idea that the stuff at the bottom of the rankings or the middle of the rankings, the teams that are nowhere near the top four, that matters almost as much as the stuff at the top. So, because it sort of tells you by where they have those teams, that's them sort of making their case for the teams at the top. So when we're talking about Ohio State, where do they have Penn State ranked as compared to LSU? Kentucky or Notre Dame, those are two teams that are just barely out of the top 25 in the AP poll this week. Is one of those teams at the bottom of the CFP rankings? Does one of them sneak in at 24 or 25 this year? Can you explain why that's something that we kind of keep an eye on every year?
Yes, the committee loves to talk about ranked wins, and that allows them to justify where they have ranked teams at the top. Say they have Tennessee at the top, and they can point to, well, they've got 5 ranked wins. And what they can do to make sure that they have as many ranked wins as they need to justify saying that is having Kentucky at number 25 be one of those ranked wins, or Mississippi State or something. They can put teams in the bottom where nobody's really paying attention. They just hide them there at 23, 22, 24, 25, so that they can then justify the rankings at the top by, hey, 5 ranked wins, and then the team that below them, only has 4. So, you got to look at the body of the work and who they've played. And so that, they use the, like the bottom 5, 6, 7 to excuse, justify, provide proof for their rankings, even though they are the ones that it's kind of like they're giving police the evidence that they want them to have, in a court case, like, here you go. Here's all of the fingerprints and DNA you need. And meanwhile, they've manufactured most of it.
Tony, if the ranking doesn't fit, you must acquit. That's write that down. That's tremendous legal advice right there. This feels like in a year when the difference between the number 10 team in the country and the number 35 team in the country might be smaller than it has been in at least 10 years or so. That's sort of what a lot of the advanced statistical, SP plus kind of stat systems will say, that the difference between 1 and 4 is bigger than the difference between, 5 and 35 or whatever. So in a year like that, that's when, who is 25 versus who is 26 is a completely meaningless distinction, except in the college football playoff rankings, in which case it's enormous. So you're going to have to pay even closer attention to, 21 through 25 this year than you do any other time. What to you, Tony, is going to be the wow thing tonight? Is this going to be Clemson is 8th, or, I don't know, Oregon's ahead of Alabama, or, is this just going to kind of mirror the other rankings? What are you expecting from the committee, with the understanding that you never know what to expect from the committee?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I will also throw in Texas as one of those to watch at the bottom. That gives Alabama another ranked win. I am interested to see, you mentioned Penn State and LSU. Where are those two teams? Because in the polls, like in the AP, LSU is 15, Penn State 16. And the coaches, Penn State is 16, LSU is 17. I'm expecting there to be a little bit of distance there as they move up LSU, as you talked about. But the as I said before, TCU, I'll be watching that to see where they are. I'm just wondering how the committee, their poll will look in relation to as they push a bunch of these SEC teams up there. But I think if I'm looking for one team to be up, like there to be a team in the committee's rankings that is significantly higher than the polls, probably LSU above Illinois, something like that, a 2-loss LSU team just vaulting ahead of maybe even Ole Miss or something like that, where this is we have now put a bottom, in a floor for the good 1-loss teams with this LSU team, and then everything below that just gets ignored, and it's okay, the polls really only start here with LSU and they go up. Everything below that, just ignore. All of the Big Ten stuff, all of the ACC stuff, doesn't matter. It's whatever is above this line is all that matters. So I'll be interested to see where LSU is. I think they set the floor, and I can't even venture guess. Will they be 12? Will they be 13? Something like that.
Yeah, and Illinois, where is Illinois versus LSU? Because, remember, Alabama plays LSU this weekend. So if LSU is number 10 this weekend, well, boy, that you can only drop them to 13 because, they lost to a Alabama, and Alabama's ranked so much higher, and you can sort of see the committee at work in some ways. Also, where's Illinois? Because Illinois has a Michigan game coming up, and if they win their next couple before the Michigan game, you assume they lose the Michigan game, so it's a 10-2 Illinois. Is a 10-2 Illinois number 20, where if they get clobbered in the Big Ten championship game, they fall out of the rankings, or are they number 12, and then a win over them is still a quality win and all that? And there are plenty of weeks for things to move around, and plenty of weeks for the committee to change its mind on what's important. So, Tony, I can't believe we're doing this again this year, but here we go. Tonight at 7 o'clock, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Tony, Kevin Noon, and I will all be watching the college football rankings, sharing our thoughts, sharing our analysis and our views on what's happening. It's always an interesting watch, and all of these rankings are completely meaningless until the last one, except for in the ways that they're not. So we'll try and decipher what the committee is really trying to do tonight, 7 o'clock, Tuesday night at 7, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Always an entertaining watch. A little time to hang out with you. We end up answering some of your other questions as well. So make sure you join us there. And the best way to make sure you join us is to subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, and also make sure you hit that bell so you get notified when we go live. And finally, check out BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, Kevin, and I all covering the Ohio State team. We'll have full coverage of Ohio State's press conference on Tuesday, as well as Mark Givler, Alex Gleitman killing it on the recruiting beat. Lots of recruiting news breaking there over the last week or so, and more to come in the coming weeks. And finally, Ross Fulton, Justin Whitlatch, Devin Radcliffe on the X's and O's. Full coverage, lots of stuff again, lots to talk about. So what was the deal with Ohio State's running game at Penn State? We'll have, I'm sure, plenty on that this week as well. So that's all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up to become a member today, get access to our fantastic community on the Huddle board, and much more. It is like less than 50 cents a day. You have really, frankly, there's no excuse to not be a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com, so don't embarrass yourself. Sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.